We take on the darkness, stare down deceit. Murder in the headlines, justice in the beat. From cold case whispers to killers in disguise, we rip off the mask, expose all the lies. Facts like bullets reload and deliver. Truth cuts deep like a blade in a river. Corruption shakes when the mic goes live. We dig where others won't survive. Games rolling through the smoke. Truth hits hard, no time for a joke. Deceit, murder, we name every name. No restraint, no shame, just flame. Locked on the case, we investigate. Cold files heat up when we penetrate. The only source you'll ever need. 12 gauge investigate, we make them bleed. No games, no censors, just truth. Justice is loud, and we're the sound. This is 12 gauge investigative.
This is 12 gauge investigative. Let's jump in.
All right. Happy Wednesday to some of you. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, I can't sleep. And people have asked me over and over, time to time, what do I feel about this? What do I feel that's about to happen today? And for the most part, I guess I haven't really given it much thought. I guess I've been in a state of shock. The state of shock that makes you wonder about what really is going on in the justice system. I don't want to get on here and start talking politics or anything like that. But I was listening to some people tonight, and it makes me wonder if Bill has any fight, had any fight in him, or why he chose to even put together a plea deal. Most of the prosecutors that I've known go after the individuals that are responsible for brutal crimes. Matt Murphy, the Orange County prosecutor, I was reading some of his book, and not once did I ever hear in his book so far that he took a plea deal for the heinous crimes that were committed in his county. It just makes me wonder, why so long? Why the drawn out theatrics of the defense, putting us through everything just to put a plea deal on the floor so this individual can live the rest of his life without consequence? If prison was like the old school prison, I'm not talking about the 90s. I'm not talking about the 80s. I'm talking about the 70s. I was born during that era, so I don't know exactly, but any research that you've done about the prison during that time frame, has nothing to do compared to the prison today. You know, you were pretty much gonna pay your time to society, and you weren't gonna do it in a light, air conditioned tablet, internet, all the things that they have today. You say, well, 12, they're giving up their freedom. Most of them didn't have a life out here to begin with. So prison isn't much different than the life they were living already out here. You know, there can be some people that are imprisoned in their mind and they're just waiting for the actual reality of living in a prison. I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but think about it like this. You don't have much going on in your world. And you say Brian Koberger had a lot to live for. Did he really? Did he really? He was going to college, you know, enhancing his education. But as far as having a complete life, did he really that we know of? I haven't heard that Brian had such a wonderful life that he threw it all away. All I've heard is about his education and everything that could have been, not anything that was. I'm sure all that'll come out in time. There's so much coming out right now. And I want to play something from Nancy Grace. She had a guest on tonight and he was talking about, no, not talking about Howard Blum, talking about this individual right here. And he's talking about what happens during a stabbing. And then she goes on and tells exactly what was going on that night in that home. What happened and how people were fighting for their lives. The same people that creators have gotten on these panels and attacked countless times are not even mentioned, as if they didn't even have any mention worth mentioning whatsoever. I mean, can you imagine? Right now it is 1:47 in the morning. And if we were going to go back in time, the two girls were just leaving the grub truck, heading home. And by 2 a.m., they would all be in Kaylee's room, right? Not thinking anything suspicious, not thinking anything was there to harm them. They were finally home. Then all of a sudden, you drift off to sleep, only to be awakened by the most horrific time in your life, in the last moments of your life. You know, it wasn't until she started talking about this tonight that I guess it really hit me. And why the outrage? Because I thought, you know, it's a plea deal. He's copping. If he would have taken the death penalty, he'd be on there for at least 20 years. He'd be 50 something. You know, they'd put him to death. Almost the same type scenario. No appeal, nothing. You know, but it isn't the same thing because what we're about to hear will just make you sick. Here we go.
Joining us, Dr. Kendall Crowns, Chief Medical Examiner, Tarrant County, that's Fort Worth. Never a lack of business there. He is the esteemed lecturer at the Burnett School of Medicine, and he is a star of podcast Mayhem in the Morgue. Dr. Kendall Crowns, could you explain how these 4 young students with their lives before them at college, like, you know what I'm going through right now with the twins trying to get in college? They're entering their senior year of high school right now. Which one is the best? Which one would help them? Which one would be better for each one of them? Which one is a safe campus? And when you get them there, you're like, oh, thank you, Lord in heaven. They're going to have a good life. This is all I can do to ensure them that they'll be educated and they'll be able to make their way in the world. They're not going to be digging a ditch for Pete's sake, hurting their back, breaking their limbs. And they're stabbed dead in their beds. Now, evidence that one of the girls tried to run for her life and was stabbed on the stairwell. What happened physically to these victims, Dr. Kendall Crowns?
So each of the victims has multiple stab wounds about their body. And the problem with stab wounds is one stab wound isn't necessarily going to incapacitate you right away. So there will be kind of a running fight. The individuals will try and fight back. They may grab the knife in a last-ditch attempt to stop the stabbing, but they received multiple stab wounds each. And that means each one of those stab wounds created pain and suffering that ultimately resulted in their death. And the one that got up and ran, that meant she was pursued through the hallway with the fear of this individual coming after her, and then finally getting up on her and then finishing her off by stabbing her again multiple times.
So that is the one that he's referring to right now, is Anna. So can you imagine everything that's been said about these 4 people? All the innuendos, all the perversion, all the things that have been said from other people to say, well, I can't believe it, and Brian's innocent, and this and that and the other. You really should be ashamed of yourself, just like this prosecutor should. If I was her father, I would be livid. I would be livid. There's no way in hell that I would have ever accepted a plea deal. You know, just listening to that little bit right there, if that doesn't turn your skin a little bit, it doesn't make you feel sick to your stomach at all, being chased by somebody stabbing you as you're running away. She was stabbed on the stairwell. We didn't get that in Dateline. She was stabbed on the stairwell. So it started on the stairwell. And she was running towards her room for safety. Let's listen to this more.
Every one of them suffered quite a bit because stabbing cases are usually quite horrific and have a lot of violence associated with them.
Dr. Kendall Crowns, you really gave me the airbrushed version of that. A lot of pain. Yeah, I know there's a lot of pain. They're stabbed dead. They're practically somnambulant, half asleep, half awake. They can't breathe. Their lungs fill up with blood. There's stab wounds on their legs. All of this somehow deriving from Koberger's bizarre fetishes about raping women that are drugged, passed out, or asleep. What was their deaths? What were their deaths like?
So their deaths would be basically they're losing blood over a period of time. They've got the multiple stab wounds. They're bleeding internally. Their chest cavities are filling up with blood. If the lungs are involved, which I'm sure they're.
So if that is true, that she was running down the stairs then possibly that latent shoe print was Xana's. I mean, due to the process of elimination. But think about that. If she was stabbed and she was running back toward her room, and people say, well, why wasn't there any screaming? Why wasn't there anything heard? He's about to tell you why.
There were several of them that had the lungs involved. They're coughing up blood, re-swallowing it as they're slowly slipping into unconsciousness. In individuals where the chest cavity is compromised, it'll fill up with blood and it'll make it hard to breathe. And essentially, you're drowning in your own blood at that moment.
Dr. Kimmel Crowns, you're absolutely correct. And I hope that when you are teaching all of those medical students at the Burnett School of Medicine, that you explain to them what crime victims live through at the time of their death. And it's not all clinical. Lives were snuffed out that night. And for what? To fulfill Brian Kohberger's weird fantasies. How do we know about them? Because they were found on a search engine, raping women asleep, passed out, drugged, incapacitated. Joining me now, Joseph Scott Morgan, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, author of Blood Beneath My Feet on Amazon, and star of a hit series, Body Bags with Joe Scott.
You know, at this point, I want people to know, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. It doesn't matter if you like Nancy Grace or not. It doesn't matter if you feel that she over-exemplifies what she's talking about or any of that. If you're focused on Nancy right now, then you don't get this at all. Because it is the Nancy you should be focusing on. It should be focused on what they're telling us. All this time we've wanted to know, we wanted to know. Well, now you know. They're telling us. And still a lot of people are going to be focused on Nancy, focused on what she's saying, how she's saying it, talking to people, all this and that and the other, instead of listening to the message. Joseph Scott Morgan is about to blow your mind a little bit too. Here we go.
Morgan. Joe Scott, everything that Dr. Kendall Crowns said is true and more. What happened that night, Joe Scott?
This individual gained access to this house, Nancy. I truly believe in my heart of hearts, and no one will ever convince me otherwise, that he laid in wait. He had observed this house. He looked for points of entry. And then for whatever reason, at that particular time, immediately after Xana had collected that food order, he decided to make entry. And he was purposed to do what he did, ascending, I believe, to that top floor first, went in and attacked those two girls in that room. He attacked one to the point where she was deceased at the door and was blocking the ability for the other young lady to egress out of that room. So he's got them sent.
So he said one of them was killed at the door where she was blocking the doorway. So the fact that we've been told Maddie was asleep, everybody's had that picturesque, she was laying in bed, maybe she didn't even know it. Maybe she just fell into a sleep and never woke up because she was killed in her sleep. That's not what happened at all, it seems like. And you can doubt me and you can say, well, you're just going with what they're saying. It's not written anywhere. Nobody's proven it. Well, let me tell you something, Sherlock. Why the fuck would these people be saying this stuff if it wasn't true? I guess you're so used to you saying stuff that isn't true that you doubt everybody else's sincerity. These people have nothing to gain. by telling us what they're telling us. But let that sink in a little bit. Maddie, most likely, I would say, was the one killed in front of the doorway, blocking the doorway. Because we heard Kaylee was slumped over in the corner. Let's hear some more of what he has to say.
Essentially trapped in there, and he's moving back and forth between them, perhaps wielding this knife. And this knife, for folks that haven't been around a K-bar, is very robust. I mean, it is a killing knife. As a matter of fact, developed by the Marine Corps. Nancy, they actually had a field manual that taught combat tactics in CQB, close quarter combat, with this knife. And this is the weapon of choice here, allegedly, that he wielded against both of them. One of the newest turns in this whole thing, back to Xana, is that, we were told wrongly by the coroner, I think 2 days afterwards, she gave a press conference or spoke to a reporter where she said that they all appeared to be asleep in their bed. No, this was a dynamic situation. Something drew her upstairs. And if now we are to believe what happened, Xana was attacked on that staircase. And of course, we know that her boyfriend, Ethan, downstairs was equally attacked. We had heard a report earlier that not only may he have been stabbed, but also his throat had been slashed, an incised one, which adds a completely different level to all of this. The brutality of this, you can't take the measure of it. You can in the morgue, obviously, but when you contextualize these bodies at the scene and you see the blood deposition and the struggle, maybe broken things, knocked over furniture, you get the full force of this. And you know what, Nancy? I'm so disappointed because I don't know if family will ever truly hear about this. I don't know that we'll ever know truly what happened that night in that environment unless he's compelled to allocute.
Isn't that just heartbreaking? Isn't it just heartbreaking if it did go down like that? You're running down the stairs, fighting for your life, and this guy's on you. Quick. Stabs you in the back. You're bleeding internally, not realizing what's going on. You're in shock. You're thinking, if I can just go back to my room and get Ethan, he'll take care of this. It's okay. I'm here to help you. What a sick fuck. I mean, honestly, this plea deal is a gift wrap from all the people that were going against Bill Thompson. You should be sending him fruit baskets and going away gifts because he did y'all a favor. All the Santa Claus jokes and all this and that and everything else, well, Santa Claus delivered early, didn't he? I just don't understand how people can be so divided on this because it's never happened to you. You probably don't know a single person who's ever gone through any kind of trauma. If you had, you wouldn't be on that side. And once again, it's not about being on the side. It's about being on what's right and what's wrong in this world. And this is wrong. Because it's setting a precedent to say, you know what? We can put the death penalty on the table. And if we reach so far and feel that the defendant wants to plea, then we'll offer him a plea deal. It's almost like he got a possession charge or a Mandel charge. That's how limited this crime has been linked to. Not a quadruple murder, but a charge where this individual doesn't have to do anything but go to prison.
Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve.
What is the address of the emergency? 1122 King Road.
Emergency then and now, as the victims' families reeling over a backdoor deal done without their consent, where Brian Koberger pleads guilty and escapes any possibility of the death penalty. Look, people are divided. Death penalty, no death penalty. But it should at least go to a jury. The victims' families should at least know it went to a jury. Then, win or lose, at least the state did everything it could possibly do. This as nightmarish scenarios play out about what Idaho killer Brian Koberger will now do since he has been spared the death penalty. Straight out to renowned psychologist specializing in forensic psychology, Dr. John Delatorre. Nothing will preclude him. Right now, of course, Dr. Delatorre, he, the devil, is gnashing his teeth and twitching his tail, rubbing his hands together in glee, because tonight a deal with the devil has been made. A plea deal with Brian Koberger. It tastes like dirt in my mouth right now. Dirt. I never thought the state would do this. I thought remote possibility they might lose, but they would have gone down fighting, sweaty, dirty, bloody, bruised, but fighting. That's what it means to be a trial lawyer. If you're not up for it, then get out of the ring. Throw in the towel. Nothing will prohibit Brian Koberger from lounging in his private cell, writing his online girlfriends, writing his memoirs, making money off his art. I almost feel like I'm going to be sick. Explain nightmarish scenarios spinning out in my mind about how he will be coddled. He will be treated like a hero behind.
And there's been multitudes of people say, well, how come you are so fixated on him being guilty? It's not like there's any evidence. It's not like the car this. It's not like the only thing y'all got is the DNA. Well, it sounds like they got a whole hell of a lot more than the DNA. I mean, where did they get this play-by-play at? How did they get this play-by-play? You know how? Through forensic investigation. They pieced together all this. They looked at the blood spatter. They looked at all this stuff to give you the most definitive way that this could have possibly went down. Exactly. I agree with you. If this keeps happening, they might as well get rid of the death penalty. Then there's no need for appellate attorneys or death penalty qualified attorneys. You're right. If it doesn't be in an Alfred plea, I think the courthouse will explode. I just don't get how the other side is so angry about this. Their hero is going to prison for the rest of his life. They thought he'd be innocent and get off. Somebody even told me earlier, if the prosecution had their case as strong as they did, they would have never offered a plea. There's more that goes into a plea than evidence, you twit. This was about money. This was about the defense running out of continuances and not being prepared for court, the trial. This was about so many games that were going on behind the scenes where Essentially, the prosecution put the defense in the corner, and defense said, okay, we have no more. But to be honest, Bill should have kept his word. Why put the defense or the death penalty on the table if you're going to take it off 6 weeks before trial?
Bars.
I'm already sick, Nancy. This was done in the shadows, in the night. I mean, the for what? For what reason? I mean, all they got was the death penalty off the table. That's the only thing that this plea deal has done. So then why do it at all? If you were gonna do it, you should have done it at the very, very, very beginning of all of this. But instead, now it seems the prosecution is either too sheepish or too cheap to actually want to engage in this trial. And that is the second offense, right? This is the secondary victimization of this entire family. The idea that they would be so, perturbed by seeing all the gruesome photos of the crime scene or whatever, that negates their wanting justice, right? Everybody has their own definition of justice, but this family deserved their day in trial to speak for the voices of the victims that have been gone way too soon at the hands of this individual.
You know, I'm so sick of people talking to us like we're children. They do it on here on these YouTube videos. We got to put up a trigger warning because some people might be triggered. We can't show that because, I wouldn't want you to be triggered or have nightmares at night. This is true crime. If you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen, man. For real. I mean, our whole country has gone soft. And I don't see any end in sight. The woke generation just tore through everything and made everything shambles. It's like this. It's just terrible. But at the same time, I agree with that. I know the DA think they're saving the family from the years of bullshit, but they should listen to those who needed the trial for their sense of justice. Hey, Glitter. Hey, Bullets. Maybe if you wouldn't have paid the defense lawyer so much money, you'd have money to have toward the appeals, to have toward everything else. You're going to take this on. You're going to put that stamp on it. And at the end, you're going to say, here's a plea bargain. Sign on the dotted line. Sorry about that. I don't know if it's my freaking internet or if it's freaking the storms. I don't know. Let me get the video back up. Thank y'all for being here. Like I was saying, you don't have the fight in you, then don't offer the death penalty. Don't get everybody up with the rah speech that we're doing this for justice and all this and that, because it seems like you've been exposed. You've been exposed. That's how I feel about it. You know, earlier earlier I was kind of going light because I really wasn't on my panel earlier, but I enjoyed spending the evening with certain new people. But I honestly got to say, the more that I listened to this, the more it made me sick to think that this weak ass prosecutor folded.
And now they don't even get that. Now everything is kind of just, we're all just going to kind of move on, and no one's going to speak for these 4 victims anymore. And I think that is the significant offense that these people are going to be experiencing moving forward, that they never got their voices to be heard.
Cheryl McCollum, I hate thinking back on my fiance's murder. I don't like it. I try not to do it. When I go speak or in certain scenarios, I know I'm going to be asked and I'm prepared. I'm steeled. But when I think back, I know the prosecutors did all they could. I know that. And I knew nothing. I had never even been in a courtroom until I went and took that witness stand. But I know they did all they could. And that is what I promised to every victim I ever represented. I might lose, but you can know I will do everything I can do for you and your loved one that you lost. I will do it all within the bounds of ethics. I will do it all. Now, Kohberger, will be immortalized. I mean, you know what? Immortalized like Bundy. We're still talking about Ted Bundy and how brilliant he was. He was a psychopathic killer perv. That's what he was. And now Kohberger will wear the crown.
What a disgusting twist that this person just destroyed these 4 beautiful children's lives, but saved his own. And Nancy, one of my most vivid memories of you is we had a horrible homicide case, and I'm at your apartment. You have the whole case file laid out, spread out all over creation. You literally prayed for the police, prayed for the detectives, prayed for the judge, the witnesses, and then you prayed for the family and the victims. And again, this sense of you and I, in our careers, we have literally stood between a victim and a killer. We have taken that role that we not only will fight for you, I'll stand right here and be in danger myself as you have and face that monster. But Nancy, as you have said so many times, if you dance with the devil, he will lead. And trust me, Brian Kohberger has not done this for any reason but a self-serving one.
So why is it so hard for people to agree with what these professionals are saying? What makes it so hard, chat, for people to agree that what these individuals are saying could be correct? That he was a monster or is a monster? Because tonight he's in his cell gloating. You know, we're going to get to the next video where we hear from Catherine Ramsland, but I want to ask you this. They say he did it so he wouldn't have to have his mother testify, to spare her and the father to have to get up there on the stand and testify. I call bullshit. I think he's been a self-serving lunatic since day one. I believe that he's known all along that he's twisted and morbid and everything else in between. And everything that people tried to assimilate about him to make him human, it's just not plausible. Because how can you go into a home and viciously murder people you don't even know, supposedly? You don't know them, but you're comfortable enough to go into their home and after murdering them, feel comfortable enough to sit in a chair for a couple of seconds, minutes, however, and then get up and walk away. That takes some balls. And that should show people exactly what type of person he is. He wasn't a criminology student that night. He wasn't one looking to feel what it felt like to murder. No, he wanted to know that urge inside him, that fantasy that he'd been creating for all those years, had finally come into fruition. Opportunity met the cure for the urge, and he took it. You know, he could have killed any of these girls anytime, any place, but he didn't. He even waited for Kaylee to come back. So if that don't tell you planning, I don't know what will.
Is she breathing? No. Okay.
You know, there's the old phrase, there ain't no justice, and that is how I feel tonight. There ain't no justice. At least for Pete's sake, take it to a jury, let them decide. But the family instead gets this letter, quote, "We cannot fathom the toll this case has taken on your family." Really? Then why did you do a deal behind their backs? They told you they didn't want this, but you did it anyway. Brian Koberger now escapes the death penalty in a deal with the devil, and that devil would be Brian Koberger. To Philip Dubé joining me, veteran trial lawyer out of LA. What many witnesses and victims want in a courtroom are answers. We'll never have that because you cannot force the defendant to allocute, speak, and explain in court. You may be able to keep them from taking an Alford plea, which means I'll take my punishment, but I'm never going to say I did it. You can withhold a plea deal if all they'll plea is by Alford. Oh, HELLNO. You will admit you did it in front of the victims, but you cannot force a defendant to allocute, speak, explain.
Depends on the terms of the plea deal. Absolutely, you can. You can absolutely insist as a prosecutor that he take to the microphone and explain step by step everything that he did on the night of the homicides. He can explain what motivated him, how he obtained the deadly weapon, how he lied in wait, and how he then later disposed of the weapon, and how he then later tried to reorder a sheath, and how he freaked out when he found out that DNA was found on that sheath. It can all come in through an allocution. There is no prohibition against it. And frankly, I don't think that this is a bolt
But
from
if
the
the
blue.
defendant insists he will not allocute, he
Then there's no
cannot
deal.
be forced to.
Then
Exactly.
there's no deal.
Like, let's just say a witness gets a subpoena The witness comes into court. If the witness refuses to testify, unless they've got a Fifth Amendment right of some sort or some privilege, they can be forced to testify, or they can be sent to jail and give them time to think about it. If the defendant doesn't want to allocute, he may lose a deal, but he cannot be forced to allocute. He cannot be forced to explain to anybody anything. And where this leaves me straight out to Dr. John De La Torre is the victims never knowing what happened. I know what happened when Keith was murdered. It's been all twisted up in the media, but I know what happened. Keith left a construction site. He was a geology student. He left a construction site on a summer job to go get everybody else soft drinks because it was a remote site. And when he pulled back in, he was gunned down. He was driving the company truck in the boss's truck, and a disgruntled employee came up and opened fire on the truck, and it killed him. He was shot 5 times in the face, the neck, the back, and the head. That's what happened. I know that. There was a trial. They will never have that peace, De La Torre. They will never, such peace as it is, they'll never have that.
No, and we're not going to talk about closure. And, all different kinds of experts can all talk about incels and all different kinds of nonsense. But what the family wants is what's actual and factual. They don't want closure so much as they want the information. They want to know the answer why. Why did you do this? Why did you do this then? Why did you choose my family? Why did you choose to do this thing and hurt so many people? The question of why is what lingers in so many victims and victims' families' heads, that unless the person comes out and says it, you're never really going to know what the truth is. And, all experts and everybody else can have all of their opinions, but that's all that it is. It's just an opinion. This person will go and stay silent and then write his book, and then he'll do what he says, but you'll never be able to trust it because it was never in a court of law.
So how many of you in chat right now believe that he should have to allocate tomorrow, or the deal is off? I mean, this case has more twists and turns than any I've ever seen in my life. But to make it so cheap at the end, it's just tragic. Give these people some closure, man. Give these people some closure. Give these families the ability to grieve and tell them what you did, how you did it, and let's move on. We already know you're a piece of shit. Man up for once. Instead of sneaking in the house while everybody's passed out or almost passed out. All you've done is take the easy way out, but you want to be martyred and be the greatest of all time? You haven't done anything to deserve that title. You're a piece of crap. We'll find out tomorrow. We'll find out tomorrow.
An eerie, a haunting selfie emerges. Oh, there you go. Brian Koberger dressed like Ted Bundy. Mr. Button Down Oxford shirt. I've got a black hoodie and I don't take freaky selfies in it. Joining me in all-star panel too, Joseph Scott Morgan, Professor of Forensics, Jacksonville State University, and star of Body Bags with Joe Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, I'm stunned. I'm reeling. I feel numb. When I heard this, I felt like I got kicked in the stomach. At first, I thought it was a joke.
I felt the same way. I think I got like 5 texts simultaneously, including from my mother. I did not see this coming on any level. But if you think you're angry right now, Nancy, just indulge me for a second here. This group of people that he claimed that he was part of, relative to the world of criminology, where he spent all of his time as an undergraduate, master's degree level student, studying under people. And now he's gone out to Washington State. And, you remember the brochure or the the tool that he created in order to question people with, trying to dig into their lives and in prison, relative to thinking about crimes. Nancy, he's now officially going to be part of that world. And I bet you, my next paycheck, that upon arrival at the state penitentiary, he's going to have mail. He's going to have mail from the same group of people that he claimed that he was going to be a part of. And they're going to have questionnaires for him. People are going to want to come and interview him, and they're going to do it under the guise of academic research. They're going to do it from the perspective that they can write books, that they're going to study, they're going to present at conferences, and all of that stuff that they do. And it rings so hollow now when I think about these families who have gone through this meat grinder for these past 2 years. And he is going to be sitting in that cell, and he's going to be, I'm telling you, Nancy, it's not an enjoyable thing to be in General Pop, but I'm telling you, he, just like BTK, when he allocated, you could see in his eyes that he enjoyed that, recalling every single detail. Now, this guy's going to be given a forum. And I can tell you there are 4 voices that are silenced permanently. And to even maybe a greater extent, these families' voices have been silenced as well, because obviously their requests were falling on deaf ears.
Cheryl McCollum and I have been through a lot together. We came up together in the system. Inner city Atlanta, one of the murder capitals of the world. Cheryl McCollum, founder, director, Cold Case Research Institute, and star of a hit podcast, Zone 7. Cheryl, think it through. You have a boy and a girl. I have a boy and a girl. Okay? Follow this through to its logical conclusion. One of them, and I hate to do this to you, one of them is murdered brutally in their sleep. You never get answers. And then spin it out, Cheryl. Spin it out. As I like to say, follow it through to its logical conclusion. And then you find out. You just happen to be looking online and bam, notice, alert. The killer is going to be zoomed in to a big conference where he's a star. And he's going to be explaining the inner workings of the mind of a killer. He's the star. He's not getting payment. His payment is going to, let's just pretend, his girlfriend that he's made behind bars, his pen pal. He's the star. People applaud for his speech. I mean, why don't we all just get down, bow down to the devil? Because that is what is happening, because nobody had the backbone to take this thing to trial and try the damn case.
Nancy's spitting facts. I mean, because in reality, that's probably what's going to happen. Because people are curious now. If he doesn't allocate tomorrow, people are going to want to know. Everybody wants to know. What were you thinking? How were you feeling? What did you do before you left your house? Don't those questions sound familiar? Of course they do. Bill didn't have that backbone, did he? He did not.
Or lose. I don't get it. Can you? Because this is going to happen, right? I mean, I've had to look at Alex Murdaugh's shirtless selfies, for Pete's sake. He has a tablet behind bars. This will happen. I don't know how it's going to happen. Just the same way Diddy gets a cell phone behind bars he's not supposed to have. Like that. It's going to happen, Cheryl. Tonight, our prayers with the families of the Idaho murder victims.
And now we remember an American hero, Deputy Sheriff Ty Brown, Crisp County Sheriff's 26, had only served a year and a half, shot in the line of duty, leaving behind his grieving mother, Christina. American hero, Deputy Sheriff Ty Brown. Thank you to our guests for being with us.
You know, you might not like her. You might not like her approach, but she doesn't lie. She doesn't hold any punches. Now let's watch what Catherine Ramsland had to say about this person.
Renowned forensic psychologist, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. As you may know, she was Brian Kohberger's professor and advisor at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She has not spoken publicly about Brian Kohberger until now. She's been on this show talking about other cases, but she's been very, very careful not to talk about Kohberger because of the trial, because she was going to be a witness at the trial, and she now feels comfortable to open up to us. And we've got so many questions, Dr. Ramsland, that I've got so many questions I've wanted to ask you for so long. I want to start with, how did you first meet Brian Kohberger? What classes of yours was he in?
Okay, I want to be just clear that I'm still within the FERPA limitations that protect students and student information. So I will talk within that. I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He had an associate's degree and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester.
And Dr. Ramsland talks about FERPA. I should have mentioned that there's a law, it's a federal law, I believe, that she is not allowed to talk about certain aspects of a student, their grades, certain parts of their academic life. It's almost like a HIPAA. So she's going to tell us what she can, but unless Brian Kohberger signs off, she's legally not allowed to talk about certain elements of his academic career. So just keep that in mind if there's some things that Dr. Ramsland can't answer. What was your perception of him?
He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and curious. And there was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career.
Do y'all believe that she has the capability to go and write a book on this? You think that she'll go in wherever Brian ends up, interview him, and then write a book? Even if it's a fiction, you know? Y'all think she has the capability to write a book on Brian? Maybe that was his plan all along.
Is there anything looking back now that was strange about him or that you noticed?
When I look back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. I think when you're a teacher, your instinct is to accept students at face value. You don't, start with suspicions or, and there really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns.
I think it was 4 classes that you taught him in. What were those classes?
There were 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that I taught, and he was in all of them. Well, one was Introduction to Forensic Psychology. Another was my death investigation class, which was called Psychological Sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the Psychology of Antisocial Behavior. And then he got into the graduate program in criminal justice for a master's degree. And he took a course with me called Behavioral Criminology.
Is there anything, Dr. Ramsland, when you look back and you think about the curriculum of those classes, and not getting into his specific experience, but when you think about what you taught in those classes that you think, oh my gosh, he may have used that in what he's now accused of doing here in Idaho?
Well, the antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers, and we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer, whom you just mentioned, and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them, and what was it like for him, to be caught. So that's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various.
So she's telling you that, she believed that it was more mental aspect than the physicality of the crime, which, I've had many guests on my panel that we've deep dove into the physiological aspect or the mental aspect of this crime, and it does make sense what she's saying because, to be a forensic psychology major means that you're studying the minds of certain types of individuals. And obviously, he was studying the mindset of serial killers. So, did he get trapped into it? Did he become fascinated? I don't know if we'll ever know.
Behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. I think now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about, we all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
Can you say, Dr. Ramsland, what it was looking back now that sort of raises your eyebrows specifically in terms of things in the class?
I think just the idea of wanting to study offenders and what their thought process was, how they felt about their crimes, wanting to study that, and then finding out that this is a person who then is now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way? Did I, but I can't second guess that, because I may have inspired somebody else to become an FBI agent. And that's
so true. It's not her fault. Not her fault at all. Many people can put blame all over the place. But when it's all said and done, there's only one person that went into that home that night. And he's sitting right there in Orange. She didn't go in that house. DoorDash driver didn't go in that house. He went into that house. These people, should have a clear conscience, because you really don't know who you're dealing with until you spend an allotted amount of time watching and observing. And many people are good at being chameleons, like I've always said. Obviously, he blended in. As socially awkward as he is, he was able to fool a lot of people, especially when their opinion counted. Now, as far as the general population, the social aspect of it, they were onto him. They pegged him. But the professors, the advisors, all the people, he was able to fool them because I'm sure he could turn it off, the creepiness, and become exactly who they wanted him to be. I'm back. Let me know if you can hear me. I keep getting booted off. I don't know what it is. Hold on a second. Let me pull that video back up. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Let me pull that video back up. The feds are trying to silence me.
The vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
Can you say, Dr. Ramsland, what it was looking back now that sort of raises your eyebrows specifically in terms of things in the class?
I think just the idea of wanting to study offenders and what their thought process was, how they felt about their crimes, wanting to study that, and then finding out that this is a person who then is now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way? Did I, but I can't second guess that, because I may have inspired somebody else to become an FBI agent. And that's, unfortunately, in this field, that's what we live with.
I mean, you've been studying serial killers most of your life, but when you talk about the fact that you may have, what you taught may have inspired this, that's got to be hard for you to process, I would imagine.
It's terrible, very hard. And it's not just what happened to the victims. I really thought Brian Koberger was a promising student who really could have made a mark in this career in a very positive way. I thought that. So disappointed, angry, and very shocked that this is who he turned out to be, and horrified for the victims and their families. Just horrified. I mean, I worked with Dennis Rader closely for 5 years. I met the victims' families. I saw the devastation that these kinds of acts can have. And I have to always keep that in mind when I'm teaching these subjects.
What did you think when you first heard that Brian Koberger, your former student, was arrested for this?
I was completely floored. I didn't believe it. And his demeanor that we saw on media was that he was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. So I wanted to wait and see. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as months go by and he kept saying that he had an alibi, and I wondered, well, why are you sitting in jail? Give us your alibi, get out. And that wasn't happening. And then it was really when.
Because he didn't have one. Stargazing didn't really fit. And I believe that too was going to play a role in all this as well. All the puzzle pieces he knew he couldn't defend against. How was he going to defend against? In his mind, all this evidence that was stacked against him, how was the defense going to spin it where it made sense for a jury not to convict him? I think he got scared of the death penalty, honestly. Nobody wants to go to death, but you know what? If you commit a crime such as this, you should have to pay the ultimate price. There's a lot of people that had to pay that ultimate price for their decisions.
And he said his alibi, and it was clearly not an alibi, and he would have known that, certainly from all the classes that he had through undergraduate and graduate work. He would have understood that wasn't really an alibi. I think that was when I was really, floored that this is my student who has done these things.
You mentioned, I mean, you studied BTK, the serial killer. You met with him many times in prison. This is what you do in a hope to prevent these things from further happening and understand the mind of a serial killer. Would you want to study Brian Koberger? Have you put any thought into that? Is that something that you think could be possible?
I've been thinking about that for 2.5 years. I would. I mean, this is my work. If he wanted to do that, I would. And within the framework of this is what we do to try to look at developmental trajectories, the triggers, so that we can see the red flags faster. We can prevent people like this from wreaking the havoc that they do. So if he wanted to do that, I know that he's got the intellectual capacity to do it, to be self-reflective, to help think through how his life came to this. And so I would definitely do it if he were willing. And it would be hard. But I think because I have so much material from him, I have questions for him that I think nobody else but me could ask.
And just my last question, Dr. Ramsland, I mean, you are the person that I think of who, if anyone could see through someone and see that they have a secret side, I would think it would be you, because this has been your life's work and trying to figure that out. And in a sense, it almost feels like Brian Koberger even had you fooled.
Well, I study the ones who are really good at it because I want to really try to understand what can we see in the constellation of behaviors that will tip us off earlier, because people who are really good at passing as normal and keeping their dark side hidden can fool people, can fool all the experts for a long period of time. I think anybody in my field will tell you they can be duped by a really skillful, predatory type of person. So, I'm not going to say I'm the person who can spot this. I can see things like if you have a rigid personality and you're threatening, those are red flags that are very clear, or you have a mental instability and you're drawing, violent images. These are things we can see and we can anticipate. But if somebody's presenting themselves as a completely normal human being engaged in life the way, that according to our expectations, it's really hard to see through that. And as a teacher, I am not initially suspicious that students are there for the wrong reasons. And so I think some of us have what I would call a cognitive disadvantage, because we are giving the benefit of the doubt to students. And I think that's certainly what happened. That's why I would want to work with him and study him, because I want to understand how he was able to completely fool me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see as this moves along, if that indeed ends up happening. Dr. Ramsland, appreciate you coming on.
Let me ask you, Chap, do you believe that, he was really as smart as, she even gave kind of a picture there that he was very bright, but if he was that bright, he wouldn't have got caught so quickly. So what do y'all think about this whole thing? You've heard from Nancy, you've heard from Ramblin', and you're going to hear from multitudes of other people, I'm sure, in the coming days. There's been multitudes of things being shared on the Facebook group. I don't know how much of it is true, but it's disturbing nonetheless. And I don't want to get on here and spread every little thing I'm hearing if I don't know that it's legit. You know what I'm saying? But I'm asking you guys, how many of you believed that it would be like this at this point? Did you ever believe in your wildest dream that he'd plea out? Are you still sold that he is the one that did this? If so, what makes you convinced? I know that there's a lag, so I'll wait for your answers. Okay. Anybody else? And there for a while, Glitter, I wasn't sure which way you were swaying because you were going one way and then you kind of went away for a while. So I didn't know if you started swaying the other way. But it's good to see that, you're able to have stuck to your convictions. Do you believe that he will be taken out in prison? Do you believe that he'll have a long stay in prison? I honestly don't think so. I think he'll be taken out. Somebody's going to take him out. Maybe not in the first six months or so, but somebody's going to get to him. Somebody's going to be looking to make a name for themselves. I mean, he's in a lose-lose situation. You can't really blame somebody for wanting to save their lives, but the prosecution had a job to protect the community and they failed them. You know? To that prosecutor, it seems like it was more about getting the win than anything else. Hey, Salty. What if AT's other client and him get into it next year? How ironic would that be? That would be something. I think the other client will take him out if so. Do you think she's going to try to plea out on that case? What's his last name? Mead? I believe that, I was hoping that he had more fight in him, especially seeing him lose it in the very beginning. Yeah, Skylar Mead. I mean, in the very beginning, he came on strong. He wouldn't take a lot of stuff. But it's like once they moved it to Ada County, it's almost like he never hardly spoke in any of the hearings. And I don't know if that's strategic or he would just letting other people get their practice. I wanted to see the showdown between Cyree and Nick Balance. That would have been interesting for sure. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we'll never get to see. Do you feel cheated? Because, I feel a little cheated. And I had no dog in the fight, As a creator, I feel a little cheated. Do any of you creators or any of you subs that have been following this from day one, do you feel cheated? Like you built up and you were learning about this case and you were reporting on it, and you were giving your best effort, and for the reward of letting a jury do what they were going to do, and here we are. I feel cheated. I really do. I feel like I spent a lot of my life, which by choice, but I spent a lot of time researching, reading, and trying to understand for somebody just to come and say, hey, you want to sign a deal? Okay. Now, had he done this when they moved to Ada County, like once they left Latah and they would have put the deal on the table and said, hey, let's just do this. Let's just sign the deal. We'll take the death penalty off, blah, blah, blah. And then everything that came after it, the Dateline episode, all the stuff that came after that, I could have lived with that probably. That wouldn't have been as long as an investment, And I don't know. Like I said, I've had some feelings about this that I haven't really shared. I thought I'd get on tonight and share a little bit of what I feel. I mean, it doesn't amount to a hill of beans one way or the other, but I still feel like 300 and something videos about this. Once again, they were by choice. But I guess it was just trying to show people that this guy really was who he was or who he is. It's like trying to fight the world and show them, look, you're not right. He's not innocent. He's not innocent. Look, this is a bad dude. And it seems like nobody wanted to listen to that. They still don't want to listen to that. They still want to believe the narrative that he should be free among society. There's a lot of people that feel cheated because he's not able to walk out and be free. And if that doesn't tell you the times we're living in, I don't know what will. I don't know if you actually watch a lot of YouTube, but out of curiosity, I go in a lot of chats. I might not chat in all of them, but I go in a lot of them and I listen. And the distorted mindset of a lot of these people is quite scary, to be honest. Because if they can be advocating for a killer who is taking a plea deal and still be holding on to his innocence, those are some scary people. Because that means that they have the culpability in any given event to become a killer themselves if they feel so strongly about the innocence of somebody who took 4 lives. That's interesting to me. There are so many women in love with this guy, crying, heartbroken, all this stuff. It doesn't make sense to me. Does it make sense to any of you in chat? Did any of you have a secret crush on Bri? It's okay to say it. I mean, it's all right. Come on, Salty. You know you had a little bit of a look on him. I mean, I just don't understand it, and this will fade. My attachment was the school stuff, and I'm kind of transitioning into the next phase of my career. So to be letting this go and starting another avenue, another chapter, so to speak, I'm in a transition shifting mode, so that's all it is. But I am disappointed in Bill Thompson. I'm disappointed in the state of Idaho. The police got so much slack on this. So much slack. The FBI got so much flack. You know, it's like all the people that were just doing their jobs were talked about, slandered, defamed, all of it. Everybody in this case but the killer. People should feel ashamed of themselves. They still won't believe it. After he signed tomorrow, they still won't believe it. There's still some that want to do the Innocent Project for him. There's still some that are calling up the courthouse, begging for them to do the trial. There's people just hoping that there's an appeal. There's not going to be an appeal. You forfeit your right to an appeal once you plea. You can't appeal it. It's going to be 4 consecutive life sentences plus 10 years for the burglary. So I don't know. But I think my brain has calmed down enough to go back to bed. I don't know if any of y'all ever have that issue. That you go to bed early and then you wake up, your mind is racing. That's why sometimes I get up and I do these lives because it helps me calm down again to get to bed. I used to get up and journal in the middle of the night. That was the best time of the night. Everything's quiet. You don't have to really be interrupted by anything. And I guess it's a habit that I've kept forever. So, yeah, it's ridiculous, Salty. I don't know. Like I told my subs, I told them probably after tomorrow, that'll be the last nail in this proverbial coffin. I'm just gonna, that'll be the end for me. I mean, honestly, I've said that a lot of times, but I mean it. There's nothing to talk about after tomorrow. There's nothing to talk about. I mean, there's plenty to want to know. I get it, and if other channels do it, I will be watching, but I won't be, trying to just invest my time in that, because there's a lot of people that I watch because they have some good content, but there's, far and few between. One thing I did notice today on the, where it says recommendations on the YouTube dashboard or whatever, there was like so many true crime channels that I've never even heard of in my life during this whole thing. Never have came up in my feed one time. And these people are going on and on and on about this. And I was like, damn, who are these people? I've never seen this true crime channel. I understand that, Salty. I mean, I would do at least 1 or 2, sometimes 3 a week. I talk about other cases too. It just, I guess not starting them from the day one that gives you a disadvantage. when you're researching a case, if you don't do it from the moment it happened, then you get lost in all the rigmarole. And I'm going to have to learn how to grab onto a case from day one and work it from there. Because at Idaho, I started, even though I didn't do my channel for a while, I started from day one. So, I hope you guys do find a sense of calmness. I hope if any of the family members do ever see this, that I want them to know that we stand behind them and have always stood behind them. That there's been a lot of us that have been fighting for justice for their loved ones for a long time. And, you know, I quit asking a long time ago, why is life not fair? But I will pray for the families. I'll pray for you guys in the chat. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Be safe. And I applaud all the creators that have spent many hours researching this. All the people that have done so much time researching this. Maestro, cue that music.